Billionaire yelled at his secretary, but her response left everyone frozen at 3 p.m. The clock's hands seemed to halt, as if the whole world held its breath in that marble-floored penthouse office. At exactly 3 p.m., a thunderous voice sliced through the silence. Jonathan Wexler, the billionaire mogul known for his cutthroat deals, unleashed a barrage of insults at his secretary, Laura. But it wasn't the yelling that gripped the room, it was the chilling response that followed. In an instant, her calm reply wrapped everyone in a spell of disbelief. Eyes widened, jaws dropped, and hearts raced. What had she just said? Just moments before, the atmosphere was tense, as always on a Monday revenue briefing. The air was thick with gray clouds from the storm brewing outside. The dim lights flickered ominously, reflecting the turmoil in Wexler's balding head. Employees shuffled papers and exchanged nervous glances, while whispers cascaded through the office like the distant rumble of thunder. Laura, typically quiet, was today the center of a tempest. As Wexler's booming voice thundered, his face turning scarlet, veins pulsing in his neck, she stood rooted, an island of serenity amidst his storm. "What do you think this is, a joke?" he spat, slamming his fist on the polished oak desk. The sound echoed, a cannon shot in the silence. But Laura didn't flinch. Instead, her voice swept over them all like a summer breeze. "You're right, it is a joke, Mr. Wexler. You're just not in on it." Gasps filled the room. A handful of coffee mugs clinked against saucers, hands trembled, and the air grew thick with unsaid words. The shock on the faces of onlookers was almost tangible. Some ducked their heads, afraid to witness the aftermath, while others leaned in to catch every whispered word. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads-up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Just as the murmur grew, Lisa, the junior analyst, leaned closer to her computer, her heart pounding in her chest. Did she really just say that? She whispered to her neighbor, wide-eyed. Meanwhile, Wexler's face paled, and confusion washed over his fury like a cold shower. The air crackled with a charged silence, thick enough to slice. What would he do next? Eyes darted between the two, caught between fear and a twisted thrill. Then, he leaned in closer, his voice low and dangerously quiet. "What did you just say to me?" Laura's eyes sparkled with something unrecognizable. Was it defiance? Or was it something darker? As the storm outside broke, a flash of lightning illuminated her face, leaving behind an eerie shadow. Wexler stood frozen, an immovable force facing the unknown. The fate of that moment seemed to teeter on a knife's edge. What lay next for them? And just like that, in the eye of the storm, the restless crowd waited with bated breath. What drama was about to unfold next? The air in the penthouse felt electric, crackling with unspoken tensions. Laura held his gaze, a mixture of calmness and something akin to exhilaration flickering in her eyes. For a moment, it appeared that time had forgotten them all. The room, filled with a blend of curiosity and fear, felt like a pressure cooker teetering on the edge of explosion. "What did you just say to me?" Wexler's voice dripped with venom, his aggression simmering just below the surface. The faint ticking of the wall clock announced the slow march of seconds, heightening the suspense. "Did you ever think you might be the punchline?" Laura's voice was equally low, but unyielding, sharp, like the snap of a taut wire. The crowd shifted, their collective breaths hitching in their throats. They were witnessing a showdown unlike any other. Suddenly, with a practiced finesse, Wexler stepped back, ripping a piece of paper from his desk, the latest stock report crammed with numbers. He held it up as if it were gold, waving it in the air. "This is not a joke, Laura. Do you have any idea what happens when you screw up?" You think I can just throw money at my problems? Get out of my office. The slap of the report against the desk echoed like a bomb detonating. Laura didn't budge. An unsettling calm enveloped her, and she took a small step forward, her heart racing, but her voice steady. But what if I told you the only real joke is how blind you are to your own failures? Wexler's face twisted at her words, his expression a cocktail of disbelief and rage. You think you know more than me? He challenged, the tone high and dangerous. The employees watched as if caught in a thrilling cliffhanger. What would happen? We both know you surround yourself with sycophants who wouldn't dare tell you the truth. Her words felt like daggers piercing, sharp evoking whispers of agreement among those hidden in the shadows. Enough. Wexler bellowed, his booming voice shaking the very walls of the office. He raked a hand through his thinning hair, frustration oozing from every pore. You're fired. Don't you get it? You're nothing without this job. A heavy silence fell, thick as fog, the kind that muffles voices and makes breathing feel laborious. Laura's heartbeat reverberated against her ribcage. In that moment, she felt a surge of adrenaline, pure exhilaration coursing through her veins. You think you're successful because of your money? What happens when that money runs out or when life throws you an unexpected curveball? Wexler's posture faltered, and for just a fleeting second, vulnerability flickered in his steely gaze. Laura pressed forward, sensing his momentary weakness. True power isn't about cash, it's about knowing how to rise when you fall. As she spoke, a clap of thunder roared outside, a fantastic crescendo that seemed to punctuate her every word. To the outsiders, the storm mirrored the brewing conflict, and almost instinctively, the employees began shuffling their belongings, anxiety palpable in the air. In one resolute moment, Wexler leaned across the desk, his expression dimming from fury to something darker, more primal. You've gone too far, Laura. You're playing a dangerous game. The tension thickened, twisting like smoke. Just then, Laura's phone buzzed violently against the surface. An emergency alert. Her heart lurched as she glanced down at the screen. What she saw made her breath hitch. News flashing across the screen, a stark reminder that outside these walls, chaos reigned, all eyes turned, a question hanging, heavy, unspoken. What danger was stirring just beyond their penthouse walls? Laura's instincts screamed at her that this wasn't just a battle with Wexler anymore, it was the beginning of something much larger, more sinister than she had ever anticipated. As she raised her gaze to meet his, a fleeting sense of dread filled her chest. What if they weren't the only ones with something to lose? What was lurking just outside the safety of complacency? And some among them began to wonder, had they unwittingly stirred a force that was beyond mere ambition and resentment? The storm outside reached a fever pitch, but inside, a different tempest brewed. What would happen when those two worlds collided? The storm's fury raged beyond the glass walls, a horizontal line of darkness that promised devastation. Rain pummeled the penthouse window like 1,000 tiny fists. Laura could feel it, a reverberating pulse, an echo of something primal that mirrored the tension in the office. Wexler's eyes darted to the screen of Laura's phone, the furious energy around him clashing against the cold reality of the news. What's happening out there? He snapped, the authority in his tone fraying at the edges. Laura hesitated, caught between reacting to Wexler's command and the impact of the alert flashing against her skin. An explosion downtown, she breathed, her voice cracked with the weight of uncertainty. Gasps spread throughout the room, a chorus of disbelief hanging heavily in the air, faces turned to one another in stunned silence. Conversations about profits, losses, and power dynamics shrank into the background, overwhelmed by a more pressing threat. The hum of the office buzzed into an anxious whisper as employees clutched their phones, scanning for more information, desperate for clarity in chaos. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the streets below, a dull thud that reverberated through the structure, shaking the very foundation of the penthouse. Windows rattled as if the building itself was uncertain of its existence. Wexler's bravado began to waver, the titan of industry suddenly seemed small against the roar of calamity outside. Get to the emergency exit now. He barked, the fake confidence crumbling like old plaster. A few employees jumped from their seats, panic now flickering in their eyes. Laura remained rooted, pulled into the vortex of fear and adrenaline. "What's happening, Laura?" she heard one of her coworkers ask, a pleading look etched on her face, amplifying the collective uncertainty. Laura clenched her jaw, willing herself to maintain composure. "We'll figure it out. We can't panic." Her own voice, however, trembled. Every instinct was telling her to leave, to flee the impotent power of the skyscraper. Let us follow Wexler's orders, stay focused. But Wexler stood frozen, glancing back to the door as if it held the key to their survival. He looked small, diminished like a cornered animal. In contrast, Laura felt the weight of responsibility crash against her. She had pushed back against him, but now she had to push forward. "We need to move," she urged, her heart racing as she glanced between the door and Wexler. With a slow, reluctant deliberation, he stepped away from the desk, a proud man stripped of his armor. "I'll lead. Just stay behind me," he muttered, regaining a sliver of composure as he turned toward the remaining crowd. But as he took his first step, the lights flickered, dimming ominously. Was that the power? Someone whispered, dread curling tightly around their words. The sensation was unsettling, that feeling of the world tightening its grip. A soft but chilling realization swept through them. There was something bigger than their confrontation looming closer. Laura could sense time slipping away, the air growing thick like molasses, as if the universe itself was watching, waiting. "Hurry!" she yelled, as the flashing lights flickered again, casting elongated shadows on the walls, shadow monsters twisting in the corner of their eyes. As they rushed towards the darkened exit, another violent crash landed nearby, shaking them to their very souls. Heart rates surged, breaths shortened, an urgent chorus building to a climax. Then came the unthinkable, an announcement from overhead speakers, crackling and broken. "Attention, all personnel must evacuate the building immediately. Emergency protocols in effect." Panic erupted anew. Employees scrambled, some pushing past Laura, others clinging to their phones for information they increasingly feared wouldn't come. But she stood still, caught between the pull of escape and the whispers of a storm swirling around her, wondering if this was all connected. Wexler's fury, her frantic confrontation, and now, the disaster unfolding outside. What were they running toward? And what truths remained buried amidst the chaos? That question followed her as they surged forward toward the looming unknown. The air outside the penthouse crackled with tension, every heartbeat pulsing louder than the storm itself. Laura felt as if they were trapped in a fragile bubble, the world outside a chaotic blur of uncertainty. Wexler propelled himself forward, his earlier composure gradually resurfacing, but even he couldn't mask the flicker of fear in his eyes. "Follow me," he shouted again, charging toward the exit. Laura followed, her instincts urging her to move, to escape this madness. Yet a nagging thought gnawed at her, a need to understand, to piece together the puzzle of the explosion and the unfolding disaster. The corridor was dim, disoriented whispers filled the air as they stumbled into the narrow space. "Did you hear? Whole buildings collapsed," someone cried, their voice quivering. Another replied, "I think it was a chemical plant, something went wrong." The information washed over Laura like a cold wave, each word more alarming than the last, creating an ominous backdrop to their flight. Wexler's outline grew smaller ahead of them, determined but shadowed by doubt. Laura quickened her pace, keeping close to the crowd. They needed to stay together. The distance felt like miles, with chaotic bursts of static and screams echoing from the street below. Then the lights flickered again, one by one, plunging them into deeper darkness. A collective gasp rippled through the group as they stumbled, crashing into one another, the panic palpable. "Stay calm," Wexler yelled, his voice faint against the growing roar of the storm outside. But his words held no power over the fraying heartbeats and nervous breaths surrounding Laura. She could sense the defeat creeping in as the reality settled. There was no definitive path to safety, only the haunting knowledge that danger loomed ever closer. "Wexler," Laura shouted, pushing through the shivering crowd until she stood in front of him, blocking his path. What's the plan? We can't just run blindly. He looked down at her, surprise etched on his face. We get to the ground floor and then what? She interrupted, pushing back against the tightening knot in her stomach. What do we do once we're out? There could be more explosions, or worse. We might be running into before she could finish. The walls rattled, a bone-jarring crash coming from above, resembling the roar of a violent beast. The sound reverberated through her marrow, filling her with icy dread. Instinctively, she gripped Wexler's arm. Everyone, back! He ordered, his voice rising above the din. Yet, the gravity of his command sank in. There was no real authority in the air, merely a frenzied cocktail of fear and uncertainty. Suddenly, a piercing siren wailed, and the overhead lights went out altogether, leaving them in terrifying darkness. Prominent shadows morphed into grotesque figures, swaying with the ebb and flow of panic. Laura could hear the frantic gasping and the soft weeping of someone nearby, like a child lost in the storm. Laura! Wexler's voice cracked, lost now beneath the pressure. We have to keep moving. They need us. Where? She shouted, the coldness of reality seeping into every word. But as she looked around, a surge of determination washed over her. Maybe this was all connected, maybe they had to stick together not just to escape, but to uncover the truth lurking in this chaos. Wexler mulled it over, eyes darting around frantically. Then a sudden realization dawned upon him, a dark understanding rippling within. If we can get to the roof, maybe we can call for help. They might have helicopters waiting. A flicker of hope sparked to life in Laura's chest, but as quickly as it ignited, it dimmed. The idea of climbing upward into the clutches of the storm felt like a double-edged sword. Okay, she said, her voice low but steady. But we need to be swift and smart. I'll follow your lead, but we can't lose anyone else. In that moment, she understood escaping wasn't just about survival. It was about confronting whatever truth lay ahead, ready to unravel the mystery binding them all together. As they started to make their way back toward the elevators, a low rumble echoed above them, almost drowning out another faint sound creeping closer, a voice, lost in the chaos, crying out desperately for help. What if rescuing the lost became their only salvation? And who among them might end up being the real danger? The fear gripped tighter, their choices hanging precariously over a chasm of dread. Wexler's heart raced. The voice above them was unmistakably human, a sound pierced through the tumult in the air. It was laced with fear, echoing their own. Help! Please! The cries were desperate, haunting. Do you hear that? Laura whispered, her pulse quickening in rhythm with the urgency of the voice. They were so close. Yet the rest of the group remained frozen. Fear rooted them to the spot, breeding indecision. We can't just leave them, Wexler said through gritted teeth, his determination rekindling. If we don't help now, we might regret it forever. They could be injured. But moving deeper into danger, Laura began, her voice trembling, the weight of possibilities pressing on her shoulders like the building debris above. Wexler shook his head, his resolve sharpening. This might be our only chance. Let us check it out. He motioned for her to hush and followed the way the cries were coming from, moving cautiously but urgently. Shadows flickered around them, warped panic and unease clinging to every corner. Only the faint waves of a storm pressed against the building provided some ambient sound, meaning moments of silence echoed even louder. Another plea cut through the air, more frantic this time. Help! I can't breathe. The utter terror in that voice, the very essence of desperation, sent a chill down Laura's spine. We have to go, she said, feeling the weight of the decision settle like a thick fog. The crowd around them had thinned out, their focus turned inward as people mentally battled the decision to push deeper into chaos. Wexler sprinted ahead, his form swallowed by darkness, and Laura hesitated for only a heartbeat before following, adrenaline surging through her. The hallway twisted, narrowing further as they rapidly moved toward the source of the voice. Then, as if the universe conspired against them, the ground vibrated once more with a jarring thud. A segment of the ceiling cracked open, sending debris crashing to the floor between them and the door leading to the next corridor. "Wexler!" she shouted, panic clawing at her throat. "What do we do?" "Clear a path." His voice thundered, mingling with the sounds of splintering wood and glass. And yet there was something different about him changed. In that moment, he seemed less the instructor and more the man desperate for leadership amidst chaos, bearing the weight of their choices. Laura lunged forward. Her hands scraped against sharp corners as she recklessly threw aside pieces of plaster and wood. Every crunch beneath her fingers felt like an echo of their time ticking away. Finally, her fingertips grazed something soft, something human, beneath the rubble. "Over here!" she called out, her heart hammering. Was it too late? "Please, just reach for me," came the fragile voice again, trembling just like Laura's own fingers. The connection was strong, but it was fleeting as the minutes stretched. With renewed urgency, Wexler joined her, fingers digging and pulling as they uncovered a man, barely conscious and pinned beneath a heavy beam. "Hold on, I've got you," Wexler grunted, struggling against the weight. "We'll get you out." Just as they managed to lift the beam a fraction, another rumble pierced the air. The storm's rage intensified, each tremor threatening to collapse their fragile effort. It shook the very foundations of their resolve. "Now," Laura urged, on the count of 3. But before they could count, a sharp, sudden explosion erupted from the lower levels of the building. The ground jerked violently under them, and the lights flickered again, leaving only the faintest glow of emergency lights in the oppressive darkness. "Move, move, move!" Wexler yelled, panic igniting in his every word, as they fought against time and gravity. Just then, Laura caught a glimpse of movement at the far end of the corridor. Figures, shadows darting just out of reach. They weren't alone. Was it help or another threat that had emerged from the chaos? "Laura! We need to!" Wexler's voice drowned in the cacophony as the call for aid escalated into a desperate howl, echoing through the halls. Could they escape this time? Could they trust what lay ahead? Every instinct told her to run, but curiosity wrapped its icy fingers around her heart. What awaited them beyond the rubble? And the clock was ticking. The ground shuddered violently beneath Laura's feet, her instincts screaming to flee. But the cry for help gripped her heart. It was now or never. "Wexler!" she shouted, urgency saturated in her voice. "The man needs us. Just a little more." He grunted, strained muscles glistening with sweat, the weight of their choice palpable. Together, they hoisted the beam higher, but it felt like an eternity. 3, 2, 1. Laura cried out, her voice rising above the chaos. As they lifted the beam completely, the trapped man gasped, desperation radiating from his pain-stricken face. The flickering emergency lights cast a dim glow on the breadth of their struggle. Dust motes twirled in the thin shafts of light, swirling like ghostly reminders of everything at stake. They pulled him free, but just then, a loud crash rumbled through the corridor, sending debris cascading around them. Laura stumbled back, eyes wide with panic. "Wexler! We have to go!" she screamed, but he was already on the move, pulling the man toward the exit. "Can you walk?" Wexler grunted, his face a mask of determination and despair. The man, wide-eyed, nodded weakly but didn't take a step. "Help me!" he rasped. I can't breathe." "Laura!" Wexler's voice crackled with urgency, and she darted back to them. Time seemed to splinter, every heartbeat echoed with impending doom as Laura crouched beside them. "Can you hold him?" she asked, her fingers brushed against the man's face, panic palpable in his gaze. "Yeah," Wexler huffed, dragging the man up as Laura strained to keep him steady. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, causing a wave of dark uncertainty to smash over them. And then, it hit. The ground beneath them roared, the walls crumbling. Dust billowed, choking the air, but through the haze, Laura spotted those movements at the end of the corridor again. Shadows. No, they were figures, about 4 or 5 of them, emerging with frenzied energy, rushing toward them. Wexler. We're surrounded. She shrieked, clutching at the man's arm tighter, fear coursing through her veins. Get out, now. Wexler shouted, his eyes locked on the approaching figures. They were sketchy, darting in and out of the light, but she could see wild movements, their faces obscured. Wexler, she hesitated, the weight of panic juxtaposed with the responsibility coursing through her. Would they have to abandon their only chance for safety? Now. He roared, urgency anchoring his voice. There's no more time. With the man on his feet, Wexler steered them toward the exit, but it felt like they were moving in slow motion. The shadows loomed larger, echoes of footsteps blending with the tremors that rolled through the foundation. Run! The command burst from Laura's lips, and they either dashed or stumbled down the corridor, fear thrumming hot and wild in their chests, but as they reached a disheveled section of wall, the figures rushed forward, stopping them in their tracks. Faces broke through the dim light, twisted masks of fear and desperation carved into their features. Help us! Please help! A woman cried out, extending a trembling hand as if they were the last hope. Laura's eyes flicked to Wexler, confusion flickering in the depths of his gaze. In that moment, a choice unfurled before them like a savage tapestry. Should they turn back, risking themselves to save yet more lives? Or flee into the darkness, leaving the others behind? The air thickened with an impossible decision as the shadows drew nearer. We can't, Laura whispered, her heart heavy, and just as she pondered their next move, the walls trembled again, and the space around them shook violently. Could they save themselves, or would they be swallowed by chaos? The storm raged on. The chaos reverberated around Laura, a living nightmare closing in. We have to help them. The plea slipped from her lips, but deep down, she fought the gnawing fear that this could be the end for them all. Laura, think. Wexler's voice sliced through the tumult like a blade. He glanced back at the figures, their frightened faces merging into a swirling blend of desperation and urgency. What good are we if we're trapped? We can't help anyone if we're buried in rubble. Around them, the air felt thick and oppressive, each breath a struggle against the dust and panic. The shadows advanced, their figures expanding like a waking nightmare. Please. The woman screeched, her voice trembling. We're all going to die in here. A sudden ache spread across Laura's chest. Each heartbeat echoed the weight of indecision. Turning away felt impossible, yet moving towards the open maw of despair tugged at her instincts. We can't just leave them, she murmured, the desperation thick in her voice. Her fingers trembled against the wall, ghostly remnants of past decisions replaying in her mind. Listen to me, Laura. Wexler snapped, the raw edge of fear sharpening every word. We're either going or we're staying. Choose. The shadows were almost upon them now, creeping figures swathed in dust and terror. She could see their wild eyes, reflecting a panic that resonated all too painfully. In that moment, a flicker of hope ignited within her, a glimmer of possibility. We can grab them. Just a few. Let us get them out. And then the howling winds grew louder, drowning out her words as debris rained down, showering them in an uneasy mist. A flick of movement caught her eye. One of the shadows stepped closer, revealing a man with a bloodied arm and a twisted leg. He winced, pain etched across his face. Help! He gasped, as he clutched a nearby beam for balance. Wexler's breath hitched. We can make it with them. But they need to move now. Get back! A voice from the crowd shouted, sharp with urgency. We can't just let anyone in. We have to save ourselves. Panic rippled through the small group, pushing them dangerously closer to hysteria. The figures shuffled nervously, eyes darting, voices rising in a chaotic clamor. Save yourself. Don't help them. Sweat trickled down Laura's spine, each beat a reminder of the weight they carried. We can't abandon them. The plea was instinctual, a raw, human response to their collective suffering. Laura, Wexler began, but the words fell flat against the roar of collapsing walls and the deafening cries for help. She took a step into the fray, heart hammering. We'll regret this. Fingers grazed against hers, her own hand instinctively reaching out towards the trapped souls. The woman grasped her wrist, her grip strong despite the frailty of her frame. Please, don't leave us. Their eyes met, and in that connection, desperation took on a new form, an electric pulse of humanity amid the terror. But choice hung heavy in the air. With the sound of further destruction echoing through the corridor, the ground lurched beneath their feet again. The walls creaked ominously, announcing an impending collapse that loomed like a guillotine. Now or never. Wexler said, the tremor returning to his voice as fearful realization sank in. Choose, Laura. We can't save everyone. A tightness settled in her throat. Did they really have to sacrifice themselves? Could they make it out alive? But just then, a sound broke through the cacophony, a different kind of desperation, a roaring rush and a creeping terror both familiar and foreign. From behind them, a more sinister force surged forth, a shadowy wall threatening to engulf them all. Laura. Wexler grabbed her arm, yanking her back to reality. We won't survive this. Not in here. The storm raged on, warping her sense of what was right and wrong. The choice hung in the air, like a thread waiting to snap as the ground quaked again. Which path do we follow? She thought, fear mixing with a glimmer of hope. With chaos closing in, she felt every heartbeat resonate with the question: should they push forward into the darkness, or flee toward the unknown? Time blurred as uncertainty uncoiled, and against the backdrop of fading light, shadows danced menacingly around them. What lay ahead would change everything. They had to move, but would they ever find their way back? Laura felt the weight of the moment, the air thick with anxiety as the chaos erupted around them. Wexler's grip tightened on her arm, yet she could feel the pull toward those in need. The panicked crowd swirled with desperation and fury, each face lit by fear that could easily spark a riot. Listen. Wexler's voice broke through the din, but it was nearly drowned out by the deafening roar of the collapsing structure. We don't have time for this. But how could she just leave them? The image of those terrified faces flooded her mind. The mother clinging to her child, the man with the twisted leg stumbling toward them. It was overwhelming. Laura Wexler's voice softened, desperation creeping in. If we don't go now, we'll be trapped. This place is coming down. The tremors beneath them deepened, rattling her core. Time felt like sand slipping through her fingers. Heart racing, she glanced back, catching the eye of the woman still pleading for help. A fierce, maternal hope glittered in her gaze, igniting something deep within Laura. It was infectious. No. The woman shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. We can't leave them. They'll die. We'll all die. Wexler hissed urgently. That was the critical moment. The ground bucked violently, forcing Laura to stagger against the wall, her mind racing. What would she decide? Suddenly, a loud crack echoed like thunder, and a hefty beam from above started to splinter. Dust billowed, choking the air. People screamed and began to frantically scramble. Go! Wexler shouted, an edge of panic tainting his tone. But the strength of that one desperate connection stopped her. She heard the pleading cries for help, each one more earth-shattering than the last. No! Laura shouted, her voice piercing the chaos. I won't leave you. Without thinking, she lunged into the darkness, her instincts pulling her toward the crowd. Laura! Wexler's cry was a mix of fear and urgency, but she couldn't turn back now. She had to act. A figure staggered toward her, a young boy, tears streaming down his dirty face. She knelt, pulling him close, feeling the warmth of his small body against hers, another heartbeat she refused to silence. It's okay, we're going to get you out, she whispered fiercely, ready to fight for him, just as she fought with herself. The chaos around them erupted further, screams piercing the air. The shadows surged again, alive with malevolence. They would consume everything if they weren't stopped. Laura! We need to go now. His voice cut through her determination, but she couldn't just abandon them. Panic inflated in her chest, her throat tight. Wexler! We can't leave them. Then the ground convulsed violently, toppling debris around them. In the flash of a moment, Laura saw the shadows closing in, pitch-black tendrils that reached for them, hungry and relentless. Run! Wexler yelled again, finally breaking through the haze of her fierce loyalty. Please, we can make it. Trust me. With a sob, Laura glanced back one final time. The shadows lunged forward, and the last glimpse of the desperate crowd twisted into horror. The boy gripped her hand tighter, his small fingers trembling. She couldn't let go. So, she raced back toward Wexler, who was fumbling desperately with a barrier of crumbling debris. Help me! He shouted, and instinctively the pair pushed against the last remnants of hope, the fleeting desire to save everyone. As they huddled close, Wexler focused on what was ahead, fear etched on his face. We need to find a way out. Now. The sound of crashing concrete echoed in their ears, a haunting reminder of the rage contained within the building. But as she clutched the boy tightly, the rush of adrenaline surged through her veins. Somewhere beneath it all, an ember of hope flickered, if they could just keep moving Wexler. Laura gasped as they stumbled into a wider expanse, light breaking through the chaos for just a moment. This way! But just as they turned, the ground shook violently again, and with a shattering crack, the entrance ahead collapsed, plunging them back into darkness. The light flickered, fading away as quickly as it had come. With looming shadows encroaching all around, suffocating the last shred of hope, Laura felt the panic clawing at her throat. They were trapped, no path led forward, and no escape seemed possible. Did they still have a chance? As darkness swallowed them whole, the question lingered bitterly in the air, taunted by the shadows lurking just beyond reach. A chill settled in the suffocating blackness, amplifying the sound of Laura's heartbeat thudding in her ears. She felt the boy's tiny hand in hers, his grip so fragile against the fear seeping into the space around them. Wexler was breathing heavily, picking up the vibrations of the chaotic environment as they both strained to listen for any sign of salvation. We have to find a way out, he muttered, his voice a blending of urgency and despair. We can't just stand here, but standing still felt like a relief amidst the maelstrom of the unknown. Each passing second heightened the oppressive weight of reality crashing in on them. Laura turned her head, trying to pierce the blackness beyond. There must be something, she whispered, more to herself than to Wexler. Laura! Focus! He was sharp now, his mantra of urgency pulling her back in. She sucked in a breath, forcing herself to keep steady. Right. Let us think. Then, as if the very walls were listening, a low rumble echoed through the space, and the shadows writhed closer, the tendrils creeping toward them like hungry fingers drawing near. Panic ignited anew. Now! Wexler shouted, his eyes wild. This way! She turned instinctively where he pointed, her heart racing, but every direction seemed like a dead end. The oppressive darkness felt alive, almost mocking her fear. The last glimpse of light faded, but its memory clung to her mind, a beacon snuffed out too soon. Outside, the screams and cries turned to a haunting whisper, and Laura could almost feel their despair wrap around her. It was suffocating. She took a quick look over her shoulder, imagining the writhing bodies, all those souls lost within the collapsing walls. If she didn't act now, Laura. Wexler's voice again broke into her thoughts. Stay with me. Focus. The boy beside her pressed closer, sensing her inner turmoil. I'm scared, he murmured, his voice a fragile thread. I know. I know, she reassured him, feeling the warmth of his trembling form steady her resolve. But you're brave, okay? We're going to make it. Just stay close. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound from above, a distant shout drowned by the chaos. Panic shot through her as Wexler looked up, then back at her with wide eyes. "We need to go now." With a swift motion, he reached for her hand, pulling her forward. She stumbled but kept her grip tight on the boy's hand, determined not to let him slip away. They maneuvered through a tangle of debris, the dark shadows inching closer, barely perceivable but ever present. They rounded a corner only to be met with an impassable wall of rubble. The structure groaned under the stress, another angry rumble vibrating through the ground. Wexler's face dropped, despair pooling in his eyes. No, then, a faint light caught Laura's attention. An opening, just on the far edge of the fallen concrete. Her heart leapt as she turned back to Wexler, urgency coursing through her veins. "There. We can make it." He nodded, his voice cracking with renewed determination. "Let us go." But as they darted toward the glimmer, fate twisted unkindly. More plaster rained down, and the ground shook violently, sending tremors through Laura's legs. She faltered, instinctively pulling the boy closer. Wexler lunged forward, but debris tumbled down, blocking the way. "No. No. No." Her voice was frantic, panic threatening to swallow her. Desperation replaced hope, and shadows loomed larger as all paths seemed sealed tight. They were running out of time. "Wexler!" She screamed, feeling the space around her compress like a vice. "What do we do?" His gaze bore into hers, fierce determination clashing against dread. "Trust me. We'll dig through." Before she could respond, Wexler lunged toward the wreckage, shoving aside debris with everything he had. Laura joined him, fists pounding against the concrete, adrenaline igniting every fiber of her being. But each movement only seemed to echo their impending doom. Just then, as they shifted a jagged piece of metal aside, a new sound erupted, a hiss followed by a rumble, making the very ground shake under their feet. "Laura! Get back!" Wexler shouted. They stumbled, and she turned just in time to see the wall tremble ominously. The breath caught in her throat as darkness swirled closer. Was this truly the end? And as the shadows lunged for them, a terrifying realization set in. Time was no longer their ally. In that split second before chaos reigned, Laura grasped the boy's hand tighter, fear consuming her. Would they find safety or sink deeper into oblivion? In a heartbeat, everything crumbled. The world around them trembled, and everything slowed to a surreal crawl. The walls of the crumbling corridor seemed to sigh, then roar in anger, and Laura felt herself pulled backward as debris rained down, thick dust choking the air. "Move!" Wexler yelled, desperation driving him like a battering ram. Heart racing, Laura grabbed the boy and barreled through the narrow opening they had uncovered, squeezing through the jagged shards and rusted metal. Their breaths came in sharp gasps as they stumbled into a narrow passage, the light dimmed but there the outside world almost within reach. "Come on!" Wexler shouted, urgency woven into every syllable. The boy was crying, clutching her hand as fear held him tight. But there was no time for pauses, no room for doubt. "Don't let go!" She urged him, dragging him through the debris as the cacophony behind them erupted again. The shadows loomed larger. As they emerged into a narrow alley, the storm's fury blended with the chaos of the street, a whirlwind of emergency vehicles, punctuated by flashers that danced like angry stars. Rescue teams shouted orders, and before her eyes stood a gathering crowd, faces twisted in terror and confusion. They were outside. They had made it. But the relief was short-lived. She turned back to see Wexler still at the other side, hands reaching for the trapped man they had liberated. "Wexler!" She screamed, panic ripping through her like fire. "You need to come now. I can't leave him." His voice was resolute, his body torn between duty and escape. "Please!" Laura pleaded, her voice raw with panic. The explosion's shockwaves could still be felt. Something unspeakable lurked behind them, and it wouldn't wait for heroism. Time was a fragile thread about to snap. As everything inside her screamed against leaving anyone behind, she saw at the hesitation in Wexler's eyes, a flicker of doubt in his solid facade. Laura took a deep breath, her heart pounding like the storm outside. Wexler, the only way we survive is together. Come on. In that moment, the shadows behind them shrieked, as if awakening from slumber. The calls served as the knife, cutting through his indecision. Wexler snapped into action, lunging forward. The shadows reached, grasping for them like ghostly hands. She felt the boy cling tighter to her as Wexler yanked the injured man to his feet. They wavered, hearts pounding furiously, each second a countdown. Run! They dashed away, racing towards safety that felt just beyond grasp, but escape was not luxury, it was life, and urgency thundered through them all. Laura, Wexler, the boy, and the rescued man scrambled away from the darkness, emerging into the blinding light of the storm's aftermath. The streets outside flashed with activity, fire trucks roared, police sirens shrieked, and crowds swelled, faces masked with worry and adrenaline, grabbing for the flicker of hope amidst the chaos. Tears mingled with the rain as they stumbled into the arms of first responders, who guided them near the disaster zone. At last, Laura felt the tension of the past hour subside, even just a little. A breath of relief surged as they found themselves safe, alive, together. She released a shuddering breath, collapsing onto the pavement alongside Wexler and the boy. The world buzzed around them, still a cacophony of fear, but they had made it. Where's everyone else? A voice called, distant but demanding. Wexler turned, the weight of their choices hanging in the air. Would they go back? Laura felt tenderness ripple through the faces around her, but more importantly, a spark was at hope. It's not over yet, Laura said slowly, voice trembling but sturdy. We've seen what happens when we fight for the sake of others. We just need to carry that forward together. Wexler nodded, looking out into the crowd. The remnants of shock still evident in his expression, but determination sparkled brightly. You're right. We have to stay united. The storm might have shaken our walls, but it hasn't shattered our will. As they stood together, the world melted away. Fear, chaos, darkness. They were not alone. They had faced the storm, discovered resilience in each other, and uncovered more than just survival. Let us go find the others, Wexler insisted, started to move forward, Laura right beside him, holding the boy's hand. They ventured back toward the heart of the chaos, determined not just to help the trapped but also to unite the frightened crowd, bringing light where shadows threatened. Together, they stepped into the unknown, but this time, they weren't just battling fear, they were crafting a future, forging connections strong enough to brave the storm. As they wove through the chaos and merging voices, the rain began to recede, revealing an inkling of sun breaking through the gray clouds. It felt like a promise, a new beginning in a world that almost broke them, yet didn't. Together. They would always choose together, and with that, the hope simmering in the air morphed into long-lasting determination, the kind forged in fire that would light the way forward. If you've made it this far, you need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss out on more incredible stories that will keep your heart racing. Smash that like button now if you felt the intensity of this conclusion, because it helps us keep delivering amazing content straight to you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and let us know what you think happened next. Your thoughts and theories matter. Don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support for the channel.